After being excluded from family reunions for 10 years, they suddenly showed up at my luxurious new house. When I opened the door, and calmly said, their faces turned pale. I'm Miranda, 38, standing in my custom-designed kitchen when the doorbell rings unexpectedly. The marble countertop feels cool under my fingers as I freeze, staring at my security app. There they are, the family who excluded me from reunions for 10 years, now huddled on my doorstep like lost tourists. My 6-bedroom mansion in Westlake Estates wasn't exactly what they'd expected for the black sheep. But instead of anger, I feel strangely calm as I walk toward the door. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood on the south side of Chicago shaped more of my identity than I realized. Our brick 2-story with a perpetually stubborn front gate wasn't extravagant, but my parents, Jeffrey and Tina Wilson, made it feel like a castle to me, at least during those early years. Dad worked as a regional manager for a home improvement chain, while Mom balanced part-time accounting work with raising 4 kids. I was the second oldest, sandwiched between my older brother Marcus, who was the undisputed golden child, my younger sister Alicia, who perfected the art of flying under the radar, and Jordan, the baby of the family, who could charm his way out of anything. The dynamics seemed normal enough at first. Every Sunday meant dinner at Grandmother Eleanor's sprawling colonial house across town, where the entire extended family would gather. The adults would cluster in the formal living room while we kids were banished to the basement or backyard, depending on weather. Those gatherings had their own hierarchy, with Grandmother Eleanor presiding like a queen over her domain. Aunt Patricia, my father's oldest sister, served as Grandmother's right hand. She'd circle the room with sharp eyes, cataloging everyone's successes and failures since the previous gathering. Her husband, Uncle Robert, would nod along, though his eyes often betrayed his boredom. They had twin daughters, Ashley and Bethany, who were exactly my age, but somehow always had newer clothes and fancier toys. Then there was Aunt Margaret, the youngest of my father's siblings, who compensated for her position with extra judgment. She'd constantly compare her 3 sons to each other and to the rest of us cousins, creating a toxic competition none of us had signed up for. I didn't realize how much appearance mattered to my family until I was about 9. That summer I had discovered painting. While the other kids played softball in Grandmother's meticulously maintained yard, I'd sit under the old oak tree with my sketchbook, trying to capture the way light filtered through the leaves. I remember Aunt Patricia stopping beside me, her shadow falling across my drawing. "Wouldn't you rather play with the others, Miranda?" Her voice dripped with false concern. "It's not good to be so different." Different. That word would follow me throughout my childhood, spoken with the same inflection that might describe a mysterious rash. Despite this undercurrent, I loved our family traditions. The annual summer reunion at Lake Michigan was my favorite. For one glorious weekend, we'd rent cabins along the shore. The adults would relax their iron grip on decorum, and we'd have cookouts on the beach, swimming contests, and nighttime bonfires, where Uncle Robert would tell ghost stories that gave me delicious shivers. Everything changed when I turned 16. Dad's company downsized, eliminating his position with a coldness that shocked our family. Within months, the comfortable cushion of our middle-class life deflated. Mom took on full-time work, plus evening bookkeeping for local businesses. Dad tried various jobs, each one seeming to diminish him further. The family's response was illuminating. Grandmother Eleanor spoke about my father's situation in hushed and embarrassed tones, as though unemployment was contagious. Aunt Patricia offered helpful suggestions that were thinly veiled criticisms. Only Aunt Margaret's husband, Uncle David, actually helped by connecting Dad with a few business contacts. As our financial situation deteriorated, so did my parents' relationship. The warmth between them cooled, replaced by tense discussions about bills behind closed doors. Marcus responded by becoming even more perfect, maintaining his stellar grades and baseball stardom. Alicia withdrew further into herself, and Jordan acted out in ways that added stress to our already strained household. I retreated into my art. The garage became my sanctuary, where I could escape the heaviness that had settled over our home. With salvaged materials and discount craft supplies, I created a world where beauty could emerge from chaos. My parents viewed my artistic pursuits with a mixture of confusion and tolerance, a hobby to be outgrown when reality demanded more practical concerns. By the time I reached my senior year of high school, our family had adapted to our new normal. Dad found steady work managing a hardware store, and while it didn't restore our previous lifestyle, it stopped the financial bleeding. The family dynamics, however, had shifted permanently. At gatherings, we were now the cautionary tale, the branch of the family tree that had withered slightly. I remember my high school graduation party at Grandmother Eleanor's house. where my announcement about pursuing an art degree was met with polite smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Aunt Patricia cornered me by the dessert table, plate of untouched cake in hand. "Art school?" she'd said, voice low but sharp. "Miranda, be realistic. Your parents can't afford that kind of indulgence. Consider accounting, like your mother. It's reliable." That moment crystallized something for me. In my family's eyes, I wasn't just different. I was irresponsible, impractical, and worst of all, inconsiderate of our family's position in the complex social hierarchy that governed our lives. What they didn't know was that I'd already secured 3 part-time jobs and applied for every scholarship I could find. I wasn't asking for their financial support, just their emotional backing, but that, it seemed, was the one resource they couldn't spare for dreams they didn't understand. Against my family's wishes, I enrolled at the Chicago Institute of Art in the fall. My schedule was punishing: classes by day, waitressing evenings at a downtown restaurant, weekend shifts at a gallery, and overnight inventory at a retail store whenever they called. Sleep became a luxury, but my determination never wavered. The first semester was brutally challenging. Between work and classes, I barely kept up with assignments. My tiny shared apartment was so far from campus that I spent hours commuting on public transportation. On those long train rides, I'd sketch fellow passengers, trying to capture the essence of their expressions in quick strokes. Despite the exhaustion, something inside me was awakening. During my second semester, I took an advanced painting course with Professor Diana Reynolds. Unlike the other instructors who seemed indifferent to my struggles, she noticed me. After class one day, she asked to see my independent work. The pieces I created not for assignments, but for myself. "You have a unique perspective, Miranda," she said, studying a mixed media piece I'd created using discarded materials from my retail job. "Your work speaks to transformation, taking the overlooked and revealing its beauty." For the first time, someone saw meaning in what I created. Professor Diana became my mentor, pushing me to develop my voice and introducing me to her contacts in the Chicago art scene. Through her encouragement, I submitted work to a student exhibition where, to my shock, a small boutique owner purchased my piece for $300. When I called home with this news, my mother's response was lukewarm. "That's nice, dear. But don't get your hopes up about making a living from this." My father didn't come to the phone. As I progressed through college, the disconnect between my evolving life and my family's perception of it widened. At holiday gatherings, relatives would ask perfunctory questions about that art thing, never waiting for complete answers. Meanwhile, Marcus's business school accomplishments and internship at a prestigious firm were discussed in reverent detail. By my junior year, I'd found my artistic stride. My work combined traditional painting techniques with repurposed materials, creating textured stories of urban life and transformation. Professor Diana connected me with a small gallery that featured emerging artists, and to my astonishment, all 3 of my submitted pieces sold on opening night. The validation was intoxicating. For years, I'd heard that my path was impractical, even selfish. Now, strangers were paying to hang my vision on their walls. I began building a portfolio website and networking with local designers and galleries. By graduation, I'd secured a position at Bradshaw Design, a small but respected firm specializing in commercial installations. I called my parents with the news, hoping they'd finally see that my path was viable. "A real job," my mother said, relief evident in her voice. "That's wonderful, Miranda. What's the salary?" my father asked immediately. When I told him, the silence spoke volumes. It was entry-level pay in a creative field, not the financial security they'd hoped for. That Christmas was when everything imploded. The family gathered at Grandmother Eleanor's as always, the house decorated with the same precision as every year. I brought professionally printed portfolio samples as gifts, hoping to share my accomplishments tangibly. As relatives passed around my portfolio, the responses ranged from confused politeness to thinly veiled dismissal. When Grandmother Eleanor finally looked through it, her reaction was devastating. "I suppose it's interesting," she said, barely glancing at the images before setting them aside. Then, looking directly at me, she added, "When are you going to start taking life seriously, Miranda? Everyone else has chosen responsible paths. Even Alicia has begun nursing school." The room fell silent. I felt my face flush as all eyes turned to me. "My career is serious," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've sold multiple pieces and landed a job in my field right out of college." "Drawing pictures for money is not a career," Grandmother declared. "It's a hobby that someone's indulging for now." Aunt Patricia nodded in agreement. You're nearly 23, Miranda. It's time to think about stability, a family. This bohemian phase needs to end. What followed was our first major fight as a family. I defended my choices, while they picked apart my lifestyle, income, and even my apartment in a questionable neighborhood. What hurt most was my parents' silence. They didn't defend me, but they didn't join the attack either. They simply looked uncomfortable, unwilling to take a side. I left early that night, tears freezing on my cheeks as I waited for the bus in the December cold. The following week, I received a call from my sister Alicia. They're planning the summer reunion, she said hesitantly. Grandmother Eleanor says. She says it might be best if you skip this year. Give everyone time to cool off. The exclusion felt like a physical blow. The lake reunion had been part of my life since before I could remember. Even during our financial struggles, the family had maintained this tradition. Did Mom and Dad say anything? I asked, already knowing the answer. They think it might be for the best, Alicia replied softly. I made 3 attempts to change their minds over the following months. I called my parents, wrote a letter to grandmother Eleanor, and even tried speaking with Marcus, hoping his golden child status might give him some influence. Each effort met with gentle but firm rejection. The message was clear: conform or be excluded. That summer, while my family enjoyed the lake tradition without me, I worked overtime at Bradshaw Design and used my earnings to take a weekend art workshop in Michigan. It wasn't the same, but I told myself it was a step toward building my own traditions. I didn't know then that this first exclusion would stretch into 10 years of increasingly distant relations with a family who had once been my entire world. After 2 years at Bradshaw Design, I received an opportunity that would change everything: a junior designer position at Lexington Creative in New York City. The salary wasn't much higher than what I was making in Chicago, but the potential for growth and connections made it impossible to refuse. Moving to New York was both exhilarating and terrifying. The city's energy matched my creative ambitions, but the cost of living was staggering. My first apartment was a 5th-floor walk-up in Queens, shared with 2 other creative professionals I found through an industry forum. My bedroom was barely larger than the twin mattress it contained, but the living room had perfect northern light for painting. Those first months tested every ounce of my determination. The design firm's pace was relentless, with clients expecting miracles on impossible deadlines. I worked 14-hour days, then came home to hustle on freelance projects to make rent. More than once, I questioned whether my family had been right about my choices. The turning point came 6 months into my New York life at a gallery opening I'd been invited to by a colleague. That's where I met Stephanie Chun, a marketing executive who would become the sister I needed in my new life. We bonded over being Midwestern transplants, trying to navigate the complexities of New York's social and professional scenes. Everyone here is faking confidence until something finally clicks, Stephanie told me over cheap wine and plastic cups. The secret is to keep showing up with something distinctive to offer. With Stephanie's encouragement, I began developing a side portfolio of installations that combined practical design elements with my fine art background. I created functional pieces that told stories, room dividers made from salvaged architectural elements, lighting fixtures that projected subtle narratives across walls. At Lexington, I was assigned to a challenging hotel lobby redesign where the client kept rejecting conventional approaches. In frustration, my supervisor gave me a chance to present concepts. I proposed an installation that incorporated elements of the building's history with modern functionality. To everyone's surprise, the client loved it. That project became my calling card. Photos of the finished lobby circulated in design publications, and my name was mentioned as an emerging talent. Within 18 months of moving to New York, I was promoted to senior designer with my own small team. Throughout this professional evolution, my relationship with my family continued to deteriorate. I called home monthly, but conversations were superficial. My parents never asked about my work beyond whether I was still at that company. Holiday visits became exercises in emotional endurance, with relatives treating my career as a quirky phase rather than a legitimate profession. When my cousin Bethany got married, I flew back to Chicago for the wedding, hoping the celebration might ease some of the family tension. Instead, I found myself seated at the distant acquaintances table, while everyone else was arranged by family connection. The message couldn't have been clearer if they'd posted a sign. After the reception, Aunt Patricia approached me with a glass of champagne and false warmth. "Miranda, you look interesting. New York fashion, I suppose." "Just my style," I replied, trying to maintain politeness. "Your mother mentions you're still doing that design thing. Have you considered coming back to Chicago?" I know a wonderful accounting firm that's hiring. Before I could respond, she continued. The family misses you at our gatherings. But you understand why grandmother feels it's better this way. Your choices reflect on all of us after all. I left the wedding early and extended my hotel stay, rather than sleeping at my parents' house as planned. The next morning I called and told them I needed to return to New York for work. The relief in my mother's voice was unmistakable. 2 years later, when my mother needed surgery for a benign tumor, I flew home immediately. I arrived at the hospital with flowers and a stack of magazines, only to find the waiting room filled with relatives who looked surprised to see me. We didn't think you'd come, Aunt Margaret said bluntly. She's my mother, I replied, struggling to keep my voice even. Grandmother Eleanor, now using a cane but no less imperious, looked me up and down. Well, you're here now. But perhaps wait until after the immediate family has visited. I am immediate family, I insisted. Aunt Patricia took my arm, steering me toward the hallway. Miranda, don't make a scene. Your lifestyle choices have been difficult for your parents. Your mother needs calm and support right now, not tension. I stood in that sterile hospital hallway, suddenly understanding that no professional achievement would ever be enough to restore my place in the family. In their narrative, I was permanently cast as the selfish one, who had chosen personal fulfillment over family obligation. After ensuring my mother was recovering well, I returned to New York and threw myself completely into building my career and creating a life that didn't depend on the approval of people who couldn't see my value. Over the next few years, I built a reputation that allowed me to launch my own design studio. Miranda Wilson Designs started small, just me and an assistant working out of a converted warehouse space in Brooklyn. But word spread about our unique approach to commercial and residential spaces, each project built on the last, attracting clients who wanted something beyond the conventional. My family's awareness of my growing success came primarily through social media, where distant relatives would occasionally comment on my professional page, but direct communication remained minimal. I wasn't invited to the next family reunion or the next or any family gatherings at all. Birthdays and holidays were marked by brief phone calls that felt like obligations rather than connections. I stopped reaching out as frequently, protecting myself from the constant subtle rejections. The pain never fully disappeared, but it became a dull ache rather than the sharp stab it had once been. Instead, I focused on nurturing the relationships that supported my authentic self. Friends like Stephanie, who celebrated my successes without qualification, colleagues who respected my vision, and eventually, clients who valued my unique perspective enough to pay premium prices for it. Everything changed when lifestyle guru and television personality Natalie Bryant hired me to redesign her Manhattan penthouse. The project started like any other. A consultation, concept presentations, revisions. But Natalie and I clicked immediately. She appreciated my approach of creating spaces that told personal stories, and I respected her clear vision and decisive feedback. The finished penthouse became the centerpiece of a feature spread in Architectural Digest. Suddenly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Publicists, potential clients, and media outlets all wanted a piece of Miranda Wilson design. After years of building momentum, my career exploded overnight. With Natalie's endorsement opening doors, I expanded my business into multiple creative ventures. Beyond interior design, I launched a limited furniture collection, collaborated with a textile manufacturer, and even created an online course teaching my philosophy of meaningful space design. Each venture succeeded beyond my projections, generating income that finally matched the value of my work. Through this whirlwind of professional growth, I met Thomas Reed, an architectural engineer who approached design with the same passion I did. We collaborated on a challenging historical renovation, butting heads initially before developing a deep respect for each other's expertise. Our professional relationship evolved into a partnership and, eventually, into something more personal. Unlike my blood relatives, Thomas saw my creativity as a strength, not a liability. He understood the drive that kept me working late into the night when inspiration struck, and he celebrated each success as if it were his own. With him, I never had to justify my choices or downplay my achievements. My circle expanded to include people who accepted me completely. Rebecca Dalton, a gallery owner who represented my fine art pieces on the side, became a trusted friend and sounding board. Michael Garcia, a chef who designed restaurant concepts with me, brought laughter and spontaneity into my carefully constructed world. For the first time since leaving Chicago, I felt surrounded by people who constituted a chosen family. As my business thrived, financial success followed. The girl who had once counted pennies for art supplies now managed a 7-figure business with 15 employees. The validation of financial security was sweet, though I never forgot the lean years that had shaped my perspective and work ethic. After 5 years of building my company and reputation, I decided to property. Not just any property, but the kind of home I dreamed about during those overnight inventory shifts in college. A historic mansion on 3 acres just outside the city, with space for both living and creating. The house needed substantial renovation, which became my most personal project yet. Every decision reflected my journey. Reclaimed materials symbolizing transformation, open spaces celebrating freedom, and custom details honoring craftsmanship. I designed a professional-grade kitchen where Thomas and I could cook for friends, a gallery wall displaying artwork from artists I'd met throughout my career, and most importantly, a dedicated studio with perfect natural light. When the renovation was complete, my home became not just a living space, but a physical manifestation of everything I'd built against the odds. The 6 bedrooms, each with its own character and ensuite bathroom, provided ample space for hosting friends and colleagues. The formal dining room could seat 20 for dinner parties. The landscaped gardens included a patio designed for summer gatherings beneath string lights. The first time I hosted friends in my new home, the contrast with my family's gatherings was striking. There was no hierarchy, no judgment, just genuine connection and celebration. Stephanie brought her famous cocktails, Rebecca handled the music, and Michael took over my kitchen to create an unforgettable meal. Thomas watched me throughout the evening, his expression soft with understanding. "This is what family should feel like," he said quietly, squeezing my hand as we watched our friends laughing on the patio. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He was right. This was family, chosen, accepting, and real. As my business continued to thrive, I became more visible in design circles and social media. My company's Instagram account featured project reveals, behind-the-scenes processes, and occasionally, glimpses of my personal life in the newly renovated mansion. I never posted with the intention of showing off, but rather to document the journey and connect with others in the design community. One evening while reviewing social media activity, I noticed something surprising. My cousin Ashley had followed my business account months earlier. She'd even liked several posts, including one showing the completed exterior of my home. It was the first direct acknowledgement from any family member in years, even if it was just a digital thumbprint. A week later, I received a brief direct message from her. "Your work is beautiful, Miranda. The house looks amazing." Nothing more, just those 2 sentences that somehow bridged years of silence. I replied with a simple, "Thank you, Ashley," and left it at that. The exchange was minimal, but it was the first crack in the wall of family estrangement that had seemed impenetrable for a decade. Little did I know that this small digital interaction was the harbinger of a much larger family reckoning that would arrive unexpectedly on my doorstep. The Sunday morning doorbell chime echoed through my home like an announcement from another era. I was enjoying coffee in my kitchen, Thomas having left early for golf game, when my phone buzzed with a security alert. 7 people stood on my front porch, huddled together like they were bracing against a storm despite the mild spring weather. I nearly dropped my mug when I recognized them. Grandmother Eleanor, now in her 80s but still standing straight. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert. Cousins Ashley and Bethany, my brother Marcus, and his wife Julia, whom I'd never met. They looked uncomfortable but determined, grandmother clutching her handbag like a shield. My heart raced as memories flooded back. The criticism, the exclusion, the subtle and not so subtle messages that I wasn't good enough. My palms grew sweaty, and for a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But something in Ashley's expression, a mixture of apology and hope, made me reconsider. I took 3 deep breaths, straightened my shoulders, and walked to the door with deliberate steps. The heavy wooden door swung open, and 7 pairs of eyes widened as they took in my appearance, successful, confident, and very much not the family failure they'd predicted. "Miranda." Grandmother Eleanor spoke first, her voice carrying the same authoritative tone I remembered from childhood. "You have a lovely home." "Thank you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is unexpected." An awkward silence followed, until Aunt Patricia stepped forward with a too bright smile. "We were in the area for the Thompsons' anniversary celebration. Your mother mentioned you lived nearby and we thought we'd stop by." The casual reference to my mother, as if we'd all been in regular contact, nearly made me laugh. I'd spoken to her twice in the past year. Brief calls that covered nothing of substance. "How nice," I said, not bothering to point out that nearby was a stretch. The Thompsons lived nearly 40 minutes away. "Would you like to come in?" They filed past me into the foyer, eyes darting around to take in the soaring ceiling, the custom chandelier, the original artwork lining the walls. I watched their expressions shift from polite interest to poorly concealed surprise. "My goodness," Aunt Patricia murmured. "This is quite the place for a single woman." I smiled. "I'm not single, actually. My partner Thomas is out this morning." "Partner?" Grandmother Eleanor repeated, eyebrows rising. "Not husband." Some things never changed. "Would you like a tour?" I offered, ignoring the implied criticism. The distraction worked. Everyone nodded eagerly. As I led them through my home, the reactions were fascinating to observe. Cousin Bethany couldn't hide her envy at the gourmet kitchen. Uncle Robert lingered in my home office, studying the awards and press features framed on the wall. Marcus seemed genuinely impressed by the architectural details I'd preserved and enhanced. When we reached the back of the house, where glass walls overlooked the landscaped garden and patio, Grandmother Eleanor turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You've done well for yourself," she said, sounding almost accusatory. "Your artistic inclinations seem to have paid off after all." "They have," I confirmed, neither apologetic nor boastful. "Would everyone like some coffee? Or perhaps brunch? I wasn't expecting company, but I can put something together." We settled in the living room with coffee, and hastily arranged pastries for my freezer. The conversation remained superficial: weather, traffic, safe topics that skirted the decade of estrangement between us. I answered their careful questions about my business, providing just enough information to be polite without revealing anything truly personal. Then Aunt Patricia cleared her throat, setting down her coffee cup with a deliberate motion that immediately put me on alert. "Miranda, we've been thinking about family lately," she began, her voice taking on the persuasive tone I remembered from childhood disagreements. "Jordan is finishing high school next year, you know. He's quite gifted in mathematics. MIT has shown interest." I nodded, waiting for the point that I knew was coming. "College is so expensive these days," she continued. "Your parents have been saving, of course, but with your father's early retirement and your mother's reduced hours." So there it was. After 10 years of exclusion and judgment, they'd arrived at my door looking for financial assistance. The realization should have hurt, but instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity. Uncle Robert jumped in, clearly sensing my hesitation. "Actually, Miranda, I've been developing a new venture. Premium home goods with artisanal touches, right up your alley. The investment opportunity is tremendous. With your industry connections." "Robert," Grandmother Eleanor interrupted sharply, "that's not why we're here." But her eyes told a different story. I could read the calculation there. The reassessment of my value to the family now that I had resources they might benefit from. As they continued talking, specific memories surfaced with painful clarity. Grandmother declaring my career just a hobby, Aunt Patricia suggesting I was selfish for pursuing art, the wedding where I'd been seated with strangers, the hospital waiting room where I'd been treated as an outsider. The conversation reached a surreal turning point when Grandmother Eleanor patted my hand and said, "We've missed you at family gatherings, Miranda. It's time to put the past behind us. Families should stick together after all." The audacity of her statement broke something loose inside me. The gaslighting was so blatant, as if I had been the one to step away, rather than being systematically pushed out. "That's interesting," I said, my voice deadly calm, considering I wasn't invited to a single family event for 10 years. The room fell silent. Ashley looked down at her hands while Bethany suddenly became fascinated with her phone. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Well," Grandmother Eleanor said after a moment, her tone sharpening, "you made choices that took you away from family values. You abandoned tradition for your alternative lifestyle." "My alternative lifestyle?" I repeated slowly. "You mean my career as a designer? Or living in New York? Or perhaps not marrying straight out of college like Bethany and Ashley?" "Don't take that tone," Aunt Patricia warned. "Your grandmother is only saying what we all felt, that you chose to separate yourself from the family." I took a deep breath, feeling a decade of suppressed words rising to the surface. When I spoke, my voice was steady and clear. "No, Aunt Patricia. I didn't choose separation. I chose to pursue my passion and build a life that reflected my values. You, all of you, chose to exclude me because I didn't fit your narrow definition of success. You stopped inviting me to reunions. You seated me with strangers at Bethany's wedding. You told me I was an immediate family enough to visit my own mother in the hospital." Their faces registered shock at having these moments named so explicitly. For years they'd maintained the fiction that our estrangement was mutual, or worse, entirely my doing. I reached out repeatedly. I continued. I called on birthdays and holidays. I sent gifts and cards. I made 3 separate attempts to be included in the lake reunion after that first exclusion. Every time, I was politely but firmly shut out. Grandmother Eleanor's face had gone pale, but her eyes flashed with the same steely resolve I remembered from childhood. "You're exaggerating, Miranda. We always welcomed you when you made the effort." The blatant rewriting of history might have infuriated me once, but now it just confirmed what I already knew. Reconciliation would be impossible without acknowledgement of the past. Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a text. Stephanie was checking if we were still on for our Sunday afternoon plans. The timing couldn't have been more perfect, a reminder that I had built a supportive circle while my biological family had chosen to exclude me. Just as the tension in the room reached its peak, the doorbell rang again. I excused myself, relief washing over me as I opened the door to find Stephanie, right on time despite my failure to confirm our plans. "Hey." I brought those fabric samples and she stopped noticing my expression. "What's wrong?" "Family visit," I said quietly. "First contact in years." Understanding immediately, she squeezed my arm. "Want me to go?" "No," I replied firmly. "Come meet my relatives. They should see what actual support looks like." When I returned to the living room with Stephanie, the contrast between my chosen family and biological relatives couldn't have been more stark. Stephanie moved through the space with genuine comfort, complimenting specific design elements she knew I'd worked hard on. She greeted everyone warmly, but positioned herself subtly at my side, a silent ally. "This is my dear friend Stephanie," I introduced her. "She's the marketing genius behind several of my most successful launches." The expressions on my relatives' faces ranged from confusion to discomfort, as they realized they were no longer alone with me. The dynamic had shifted, and their united front against me had been disrupted. Grandmother Eleanor barely acknowledged Stephanie before turning back to me. "As I was saying, Miranda, family obligations go both ways. Perhaps if you had made more effort." "I think we both know that's not accurate, Grandmother," I interrupted gently but firmly. "I made efforts. Consistent efforts for years. They were rejected." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Finally, to my surprise, it was Marcus who spoke up. "She's right," he said quietly. "We didn't make it easy for Miranda to stay connected." Aunt Patricia shot him a warning look, but, he continued, "I remember when she called about the lake reunion that second year. Mom told her it was family only, as if she somehow wasn't family anymore." His unexpected support created a hairline fracture in the family's unified narrative. I could see Grandmother Eleanor reassessing, calculating how to maintain control of the situation. "Water under the bridge," she declared, waving a dismissive hand. "We're here now, reaching out. Family helps family, Miranda. And we could use some help with Jordan's education." The naked transactionalism of her statement hung in the air. 10 years of rejection, followed by an appearance at my door when they discovered I had resources they wanted. I set my coffee cup down carefully before responding. "I understand family helping family, Grandmother, but that requires actual family relationships, not just showing up when it's convenient or advantageous." "What are you saying?" Aunt Patricia demanded, color rising in her cheeks. "I'm saying that relationships require investment, trust, mutual respect. Those things have been absent for a decade. We can't just pretend that never happened because you've decided I'm useful now." Uncle Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. "No one is pretending anything, Miranda. We're extending an olive branch." "An olive branch," I repeated, "that comes with financial expectations. That's not reconciliation. It's a business transaction." The room fell silent again, the truth of my words hanging heavy in the air. Ashley, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Miranda," she said softly. "I should have reached out sooner. Not just with a message about your house, but really reached out. What happened wasn't right." Her simple apology, the first genuine one I'd received, caught me off guard. The sincerity in her voice touched something I'd thought long calloused over. Ashley's apology created a ripple effect in the room. Bethany looked uncomfortably at her hands, while Marcus nodded slowly as if confirming something to himself. Only Grandmother Eleanor, Aunt Patricia, and Uncle Robert maintained their defensive postures. "I appreciate that, Ashley," I said, genuine warmth entering my voice for the first time since they'd arrived. "That means a lot to me." Grandmother Eleanor's cane tapped impatiently against the hardwood floor. "This emotional display is unnecessary. We came to reconnect as family." "No," I replied, finding strength in the clarity that had been building within me. You came because you discovered I have resources that might benefit the family. That's not the same as wanting to reconnect. I stood up, feeling steadier than I had all morning. Let me be clear about my boundaries. I'm open to rebuilding relationships with family members who genuinely want connection, who acknowledge the past hurt, and want to move forward authentically. But I won't provide financial assistance or business connections to people who have excluded me for a decade, and now see me as useful. Aunt Patricia's face flushed with anger. After everything this family did for you, what exactly did you do for me? I asked quietly. When I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, when I struggled in New York, when I built my business from nothing, where was this family then? She had no answer, just sputtering indignation. Miranda, Grandmother Eleanor said, her voice taking on the sharp edge I remembered from childhood scoldings. Your attitude is exactly why distance developed. This selfishness, this refusal to prioritize family needs. Stephanie, who had been silent but supportive beside me, suddenly spoke up. Excuse me, but from what I've heard, Miranda reached out consistently for years. That doesn't sound selfish to me. This doesn't concern you, Grandmother snapped. Actually, it does, I countered. These people are my family now. Stephanie has been there for every success and failure. She showed up when biological relatives chose not to. I gestured toward the photographs displayed on my bookshelf, images of celebrations with friends, Thomas and me at industry events, group vacations to the coast. This is my support system. These people chose me, and I chose them. They don't judge my career or lifestyle. They celebrate my successes without qualification. The tension in the room was palpable, as my declaration hung in the air. Grandmother Eleanor's face had gone from flesh to pale, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Well, she said finally, rising from her seat with as much dignity as her aging frame allowed. I see we've wasted our time here. Your priorities are clearly elsewhere. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert stood immediately, like soldiers responding to a commander. But to my surprise, Marcus remained seated, as did Ashley and Bethany. I'm staying, Marcus said quietly. Miranda and I have catching up to do. Grandmother Eleanor looked at him with genuine shock. Marcus, we're leaving. You can go ahead, he replied, meeting her gaze steadily. Julia and I drove separately. For perhaps the first time in her life, Grandmother Eleanor found herself without complete control of the situation. She stood uncertainly for a moment, before gathering her composure. Very well. Patricia, Robert, let's go. As they moved toward the door, I walked with them, maintaining my composure despite the emotional turbulence I felt. At the threshold, Grandmother paused, turning to me with an expression that might have been regret if not for the pride hardening her eyes. You've changed, Miranda. I've grown, Grandmother. There's a difference. After they left, I returned to the living room where an unexpected scene awaited me. Marcus was showing Stephanie pictures of his children on his phone, while Ashley and Bethany engaged in awkward but genuine conversation about Ashley's recent career change. I hope it's okay that we stayed, Marcus said, looking up as I entered. I think we have a lot to talk about. It's more than okay, I replied, emotion finally catching in my throat. It's overdue. What followed was the most honest conversation I'd had with any family member in over a decade. Marcus admitted that he disagreed with how I'd been treated, but had been too concerned with maintaining his perfect son image to speak up. He described how his perspective had shifted when his daughter had shown artistic talents similar to mine, making him question the family's narrow definition of acceptable paths. I didn't want her growing up thinking her creativity was something to suppress, he explained. That made me think about how we all failed you. Ashley shared that she'd been following my career for years, secretly admiring my courage to pursue my passion despite family disapproval. I did everything right according to Grandmother's rules, she said. And I've been miserable in corporate accounting. Seeing your success made me finally switch to marketing last year. Even Bethany, who had been closest to Grandmother's ideal of proper family behavior, admitted that the family dynamics had always troubled her. The way they talk about you when you're not there, it never sat right with me, but I didn't know how to challenge it. As the afternoon progressed, Stephanie tactfully excused herself, squeezing my hand and whispering, "Call me later." Her exit allowed for even more candid family conversation. By the time evening approached, something had fundamentally shifted. Not a complete healing, too much time and hurt lay between us for that. But the beginning of a bridge across the chasm. I can't speak for the others, Marcus said as they prepared to leave, but I'd like to try again. Really try, not just when we need something from you. I'd like that, I replied, surprised by how much I meant it. Maybe dinner next month? He suggested. Just us, Julia, and the kids. Just family getting to know each other again. The invitation, simple, genuine, and without conditions, was everything the morning's visit had not been. I accepted with a warmth I hadn't felt toward my biological family in years. After they left, I stood in my doorway, watching their cars disappear down the drive. The mansion that had witnessed such tension hours earlier now felt peaceful again, the space reclaimed from old ghosts. Thomas returned from his golf game to find me sitting on the patio, watching the sunset with a glass of wine. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing the top of my head. "Unexpected," I replied. "My family showed up." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "All of them? After all this time?" As I recounted the day's events, his expressions shifted from concern to outrage to cautious optimism. When I finished, he took my hand in his. "Are you okay?" "I am," I said, realizing with some surprise that it was true. For the first time I didn't need their approval or acceptance. I could see the situation clearly for what it was. "And, what happens now? With Marcus and the others who stayed?" I considered the question, watching the last golden light fade from the sky. "We try. Carefully with boundaries. But we try." That evening, as Thomas and I prepared dinner in the kitchen that had earlier hosted such tension, I felt a profound sense of reclaiming my power in the family dynamic. For years I had been the one seeking acceptance, making efforts that were rebuffed. Now, the terms of any relationship would be mine to set based on mutual respect and genuine connection, not obligation or advantage. My chosen family would always be my foundation, but perhaps there was room to rebuild selective bridges to my past, on my terms, with those who were willing to meet me as the person I had become, not the person they had expected me to be. 6 months after the unexpected family visit, I stood in my kitchen preparing appetizers for a small dinner gathering. So much had changed in that relatively short time, yet the changes felt like natural extensions of the boundaries I'd set that Sunday morning. True to his word, Marcus had initiated regular contact. Our first dinner, just him, Julia, and their children, had been slightly awkward but fundamentally warm. His kids, Emma and Lucas, were curious and creative, asking endless questions about my design work and the cool old house. Julia, whom I'd never known during the years of estrangement, proved to be thoughtful and direct, addressing the family situation without the evasion that had characterized so many past interactions. "Marcus has regretted not standing up for you," she told me quietly while we cleaned up after dinner. "It's been a weight on him for years." Monthly dinners with Marcus's family became a new tradition, one built on genuine interest rather than obligation. Sometimes we met at restaurants, other times at their home or mine. Each gathering felt more natural than the last as we discovered the adults we had become beyond the childhood roles we'd been assigned. Ashley, too, had made consistent efforts to rebuild connection. We began with coffee meetings where conversations stayed light, gradually progressing to more meaningful exchanges. She confided her growing dissatisfaction with the narrow path our family had prescribed, and I found myself in the unexpected role of mentor as she considered career changes. "I always envied your courage," she admitted during one of our talks. "Even when I was parroting grandmother's disapproval. Part of me wished I could break free like you did." Not every family relationship could be salvaged. Grandmother Eleanor remained entrenched in her position, refusing any reconciliation that didn't include financial support for various family needs. Aunt Patricia made one attempt at contact, a stiff email suggesting we move forward for the good of the family. But when I responded with clear boundaries about mutual respect, she retreated into silence. Surprisingly, it was Jordan, my youngest brother whom I barely knew as an adult, who reached out after hearing about the confrontation from Marcus. We connected first through text messages, then video calls that revealed a thoughtful young man struggling against the same family expectations I had faced. His mathematical brilliance was genuine, but his passion for music had been systematically suppressed in favor of practical pursuits. "They talk about you like a cautionary tale," he told me during one late-night call. "But your life looks amazing from where I'm sitting." With my encouragement, he applied to universities with strong programs in both mathematics and music. When he received multiple acceptances, I offered to help with expenses. Not because family obligation demanded it, but because I genuinely wanted to support his authentic path. As my biological family relationships evolved, I continued nurturing the chosen family that had sustained me through the years of estrangement. Thomas and I hosted monthly dinner parties that brought together friends, colleagues, and now, the relatives who had earned their place at our table. These gatherings bore little resemblance to the hierarchical, judgment-filled family events of my childhood. Conversation flowed freely across diverse topics. Achievements were celebrated without comparison or qualification. Differences were respected rather than penalized. Most importantly, everyone present had chosen to be there, creating an energy of genuine connection. At one such gathering, as I looked around my dining table at the blend of chosen and biological family, Stephanie raised her glass in a spontaneous toast. To Miranda, she said, who taught us all that family is defined by love and respect, not merely by blood. The words touched something deep within me, an acknowledgement of the journey that had brought me from exclusion to this moment of genuine belonging. Later that evening, as the last guests departed, Thomas found me standing on the back patio, looking up at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "I was thinking about pain," I replied. "How it never completely disappears, but it changes form. How has yours changed?" I considered the question carefully. The pain of family rejection was crippling once, like a burning coal I carried everywhere. Now it's more like an old scar. It's still part of me, still visible if you know where to look, but it doesn't limit my movement anymore. He nodded against my shoulder. "You never set out to prove them wrong, did you? That wasn't what drove you." "No," I agreed. "At first I just wanted to do what I loved. Later I wanted to build a life that reflected my values. Proving anyone wrong would have kept me tethered to their expectations in a different way." That realization had been crucial to my healing, understanding that success wasn't about validation from those who had rejected me, but about creating alignment between my outer life and inner truth. The family reunion drama had taught me that forgiveness didn't require forgetting. I could acknowledge the hurt caused by years of exclusion, while still opening myself to new, healthier connections with those family members willing to meet me halfway. Forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past, but about preventing it from determining my future. I had also learned that some relationships couldn't be salvaged, and that was okay. Grandmother Eleanor, Aunt Patricia, and others would likely never see beyond their narrow definition of family obligation. Accepting this reality wasn't cynical. It was necessary for my well-being. Most importantly, I discovered that family could be a blend of biological connections and chosen bonds. The people who gathered in my home shared no single defining characteristic, except their capacity for mutual respect and genuine care. Some shared my DNA, others only my experiences. But together they formed the support system that enriched my life. 1 month later, I hosted the first holiday gathering in my home. The guest list was carefully curated, only those who had demonstrated respect for boundaries and genuine interest in connection. Marcus and his family came, as did Jordan home from his first semester at university. Ashley brought her new boyfriend, and Bethany came solo, having recently separated from her husband. They mingled easily with Thomas, Stephanie, Rebecca, Michael, and other friends who had been my lifeline during the years of family estrangement. The contrast with the rigid, hierarchical holiday gatherings of my childhood couldn't have been more striking. As we gathered around the table I had designed and built with my own hands, I realized I had created something my family had never managed despite their obsession with appearances. A genuine community based on acceptance rather than conformity. The pain of rejection had transformed into the wisdom to build something better. The exclusion had freed me to define family on my own terms. The judgment had taught me the value of acceptance. Standing at the head of that table, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The journey from rejected black sheep to confident creator of my own life had been long and often painful. But looking at the faces of those who had chosen to be present, and whom I had chosen in return, I wouldn't have changed a step of that path. Life offers no guarantees about who will walk beside us throughout our journey. People we expect to support us may fall away. Strangers may become essential companions. The only certainty is our power to remain true to ourselves, and to nurture connections that honor our authentic being. So what would I say to someone facing family rejection like I once did? Perhaps simply this: your worth isn't determined by those who cannot see it. Your path doesn't require universal approval to be valid. And family, true family, is defined not by obligation but by love, respect, and the courage to see each other clearly. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who couldn't accept your choices? Thanks for watching, take care, good luck.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. **